So, David, you said your grandparents were from Starkville, and you think that your grandfather, Mr. Devo Asthenics?
Dero Asthenics
Okay.
Saunders.
You think he was involved in farming and probably with dairy cattle like your father?
I think so.
Okay. And his wife was Grocie Saunders?
Grocie Saunders.
Okay. All right. So they lived in Starkville. And then your mom and dad's names were?
Wilburn Russell Saunders. And my mother's name was Altie Reynolds Saunders.
All right. And what did your father do for a living?
He was a dairy farmer.
Okay. And about how many cows did he have?
About 40.
Do you know how many acres of land he had?
240 acres of land.
All right. And where in relation to Starkville was that?
About a mile out of from the city limits.
In what direction?
West
West of Starkville. Okay. All right. And so I think you had mentioned that you and your siblings really weren't involved too much with helping with the dairy cattle and things. You probably did some things.
Some, but not too much. Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. So your mother, did she work?
No, she was just a housewife, and she was, she was a very good cook and a seamstress, and just a good housewife and a good mother.
Good. I would say with 4 kids like y'all, she would have had to have been a pretty good mother, don't you think?
Well, I guess so.
Okay. In a later part of the video, we're going to talk a little bit about your singing, and because you've got such a good, really beautiful voice, and you've sang in different places. But did your mother sing?
No.
Did your father?
My father sang. He sang. He was a soloist.
All right. And where did he sing?
In churches, just at church. That's the only place I ever knew that he did. But he did sing in church.
When y'all were growing up, what was the main church that you went to?
The Starkville United Methodist Church.
Okay. So pretty much all your years at home, you were in that church?
That's right.
Okay. And your dad sang in the choir there?
Not during my lifetime, but perhaps earlier he must have.
Right, because you were the youngest child and they had grown a little older then.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever hear your father sing?
No.
Okay. And let's just skip a little bit away from your mom and your father now and go to your early childhood. And the first thing that I want to know is, when did you first sing and where?
My first solo was I was 4 years old, and I sang at the Starkville High School, and I sang "A Tisket, a Tasket."
Okay. And why would you have been singing there?
I don't know. Somebody invited me to come, or somebody brought me up there to do it. I don't know.
Well, somebody must have known that you were a pretty good singer at that age.
Yeah, I don't know. But that's the earliest one I remember.
Okay. What's the next one that you remember singing?
Oh, well, of course, after I was grown and married, I sang at the Decatur Civic Chorus in Atlanta for many years, before we moved away.
We'll come back to that, but do you remember in high school any times you sang in church or anywhere?
Oh yes, I sang I was in the choir in Starkville, during my teenage and college years while we lived in Starkville. Yeah.
So did your church, do you remember if it had a junior choir, a children's choir?
I don't think it did.
Okay, so you started singing probably when you were a teenager at Starkville United Methodist.
Yes.
Okay. And what year were you born?
34.
Okay, so you probably were singing in that choir, I would say, about 1950. About that time.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
You'd be 15 or 16 years old. Okay. Now, after that, do you remember specifically where the next public place was that you sang?
Well, I've sang in choirs every place we've moved since, my whole life. When we've lived all over the world. I've been in church in each one of those places. I've sung in the choir at each one of those places.
Okay. What kind of a voice do you have, by the way?
Baritone.
Baritone. Okay. Okay. We'll come back and talk a little more about the places that you sang later on. But for now, I think I want to ask just a few more questions about high school. So when you were in high school, do you remember any specific subject that you liked better than anything else?
Not particularly. Well, plane geometry, I think was one of my favorite subjects.
Okay. Then that's a hard course for most people. Did you have any special interest in high school? Were you in campus politics or
No.
did you play any sports?
I played football.
Okay. What position?
Right guard.
And did you start?
Yes.
What years?
This was probably,
Junior, senior, or?
well, I graduated in 51, so probably 49.
All right, so you played as your sophomore, junior, and senior as a right guard, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you remember how much you weighed back then?
A lot less than I do now.
Well,
probably about 150 pounds, 150 or 60 pounds.
that's a pretty good weight. Do you remember the classification of the school, whether it was 5A, 6A, or anything like that?
Whether it was what?
Whether it was like a 5A school or 6A, or they classify schools now according to the number of students into classifications
I
like.
I don't have any idea about those classifications.
Was it a large school, small school?
I don't know. We had about 50 people at graduation, so in the senior class, so that's about the size of it.
Was it one of the main schools in Starkville?
It was the only high school in Starkville. Starkville was a small town.
Well, but it's a well-known town. I think there probably was a little larger school than you remembered. Did you play any other sports besides football? Did you have any kind of academic offers for college?
No academic offers. I went to college, but I didn't have any offers.
When you were in high school, were you in the who's who or anything like that?
No.
You didn't know Ann, your wife, back then? Okay. So I think that kind of covers.
Because when I was in high school, she was in grammar school.
Right, right. Yeah, we'll get to a funny story on that. Okay, that concludes our discussion of your early years and your high school years.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll cut this off now. If I can.